On this, how did you studied the Indian music theory, art theory? How did you get to the Greek side? I mean, and when did you
Ah,
learn Greek? I mean, you've been
yes.
learning English,
How?
you've been learning
Yeah.
Sanskrit, poetics, music. When did you get the time to learn any Greek and all
Yes.
this?
Well, this is more or less the same time. You see, around 75, 76, uh, I became curious about, you see, I had a great love for theater. And I had done some college theater in college days. And so I started exploring Greek uh, theatrical plays. And when I read them, and this is when I was reading the Natya Shastra also, and when I was going deeply into a study of what was ancient Indian theater, because my teacher said that you can't understand what is ancient Indian music without seeing how it is placed and is part of the ancient Indian theater. So you study ancient theater also. In other words, I studied not just the chapters on musicology from chapter 28 to chapter 34, but all the 36 chapters of the Natya Shastra. Now, when I was doing that, and when I, at the same time, because this was now my part, professional part, I used to teach some Greek plays to the MA classes, and then I saw that the Greek plays were entirely different from what we had been told about them. That they were not precursors to Shakespeare plays. And as I read more and more of Greek theater, and then I started reading how they were produced and how they were performed and where they were performed, I started doing a parallel study of ancient Greek theater. From 1975, I started doing that also. So I was studying ancient Greek theater and ancient Indian theater. Now, I had Sanskrit, so I could read the text in original for the Indian side. So I started learning Greek in order to be genuine, in order to explore. And with dictionary and with a lot of effort, because there are no schools to teach you Greek in India, so I was able to get a smattering of it and read through the translations and go deeper into the texts of Aristotle and various other references and various other accounts of how Greek theater was performed. And then I came to the conclusion that this is not Western theater. This is not what was written by the theatrologues of Cambridge and Oxford and New York and Berkeley about Greek theater. That they were looking on Greek theater through the eyes of Europeans. They were looking through the ancient Greek theater and drama, particularly how it was performed, through the eyes of realistic theater of 19th century, or at best Shakespeare's theater.
Okay.
And the whole rise of theater in Europe was actually a good thing, but it was never able to capture the Greek tradition. It was only capable of taking a few things, because the whole tradition of performance of Greek theater, which I was able to see through my study, the whole tradition of ancient Greek theater was destroyed by the Christians. You see, when the Christians destroyed the temples and the rituals and the religion of ancient Greece, then they also destroyed performances. They said, this can't be done. This is devilry. You can't have theater. So they closed down the theaters, and Greek theater came to an end by 4th century AD.
So, I want to continue forward with this, but can you explain what was Greek theater? Like, what were the components? kind of like the purpose
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and then maybe talk about how that's different from Indian theater.
Yes. Now let me first talk about how it is close to Indian theater, because that's
Okay, that's
far
good.
more important. You see, it's different in its presentation, but in principle, in practice, in aesthetics, it's almost the same. I mean, the ideas are the same. Well, it's this way. European theater, which developed from 16th century onwards, you know, Christopher Marlowe, Shakespeare, Racine, and all that tradition. This was largely a theater dependent on dialogue. An actor speaks something, moves around on the stage, does a few naturalistic daily life-like movements, and you know, and then there is a story, and the story is enacted. The story could very well come out of a novel or from wherever, and that's theater for you. But ancient Greek theater and ancient Indian theater, they had, of course, the dialogue, but they also had the power of gesture. No movement was naturalistic, it was conventional. All costume was highly symbolic, whether it is ancient Indian theater or ancient Greek theater. The Greeks, of course, wore a mask and a special dress. And then there was so much dance, everything was expressed through dance. In ancient Greek theater, you had only 3 actors on a small stage, but you had another 30 people or 40 people dancing as chorus. And the chorus danced and sang and spoke. So it was a great combination of music, dance, gesture, symbolic rendering, meaning through gestures and symbols, and various suggestions made by music. So it wasn't. It
so
was
you
some.
mentioned Balaji.
Yeah.
You mentioned conventional versus naturalistic.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
But
What's the
yes,
naturalistic versus
naturalistic, you know, what we say naturalistic theater means that you represent on the stage a movement which is pretty much the same or close to lifelike movements. So you get up and walk and speak in the same way. But in a conventional way, you don't speak the way you speak in life. Even in Shakespeare, you see, in Shakespeare's time, nobody would speak as if one is sitting in a drawing room, you know. Like if you take a dialogue from Shakespeare, let's say Merchant of Venice, opening lines, then he won't say, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me." You know, he'll say, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me. You say it wearies you, but I know not where it came from or how I came by it," etc., etc. And then the gestures would not be natural. Gestures would be exaggerated, the walk would be different. So it would be something which belongs to a certain theatrical language,
Huh.
not the language of our daily behavior. So this is the difference. Now, when you go to ancient Indian theater or Greek theater, then everything would be highly amplified. There'll be nothing natural. Everything would be done as an artwork.
But what was the purpose of that? Why would they want to amplify it, be conventional as opposed to naturalistic?
Because they are trying to say many things at the same time. And they are trying to use many languages at the same time. Not just the verbal language or something which we call Vyakta Bhasha, you know, something which is dictionary, lexical dictionary language. But in addition to that, it's the power of music. So a line would be sung, it would not be spoken. Even the dialogue was sung. The dialogue was not spoken naturally, neither in ancient Greek theatre nor in Indian theatre. It would be spoken in a very special manner and in a musical intonation. And they had theory.
You know what this reminds me of, if I
Yes.
may?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you ever watched the Telugu mythological movies.
Yes, yes.
And they would have regular dialogue, and then when they had the bravado dialogue,
Yeah.
they would sing it to each other, right?
Right.
You know,
Now
it-
this is all the
yeah.
tradition of Natya Shastra, and this all comes from Bailata or Kuchipudi or from Yakshagana or such traditional Indian theatre, because there you cannot express your emotion, your meaning, your purpose fully unless you take help of music. Unless you
Balaji,
take help
would
of
you like to
gesture.
sing a raga together right now? Would you like to sing some raga? Do you have a favorite raga?
Well, let's do that a little bit. Let's continue with
Yeah.
Balaji.
You know,
Let's
I
talk
can
about the
I
difference
can
of
sing
Urdu
something
Raga.
for you
I think you
later.
can let him answer the question.
Yeah, no, I can do that later because this would, and I'll do that in a context because.
I'm
you
just
know,
kidding. I'm
yeah,
just joking.
Yeah, but let me explain. For instance, yes, in order to explain what I am saying, let me give you an example. For instance, in Indian theatre, the dialogue was spoken, but it was never spoken as we are speaking in a conversation. See, so it was spoken as if we are singing something. So if they are saying something to their beloved, or if they are expressing an idea in a particular shloka, then they could sing that shloka. Now, speaking that shloka is something conversational. You see, kada kale mata kathaya kalitalak takarasam. Now, this is conversational. But kada kale mata kathaya kalitalak takarasam. Now, this is intonation. We have brought in some bit of music. Now, we can bring a lot more music by ornamenting it. Kada kale mata kathaya kalitalak takarasam.
Wow.
So, you know, you will do this according to what is needed on the stage. So, for instance, I give you an example. In a play called Mrichakatikam, the hero sees that his house has been robbed by a thief. But when he goes to see the hole which was made in his garden wall from which the thief came, then he could see that the hole was made in such a beautiful artistic manner. It was called a surang. Incidentally, surang is an ancient Greek word which came into English. Now, he sings a shloka in praise of that artwork. He forgets that he has been robbed. And he admires the artwork of the thief. Now, in order to give the true feeling of his admiration, he has to resort to music. He cannot just say that, oh, this is a wonderful work. He'll have to sing that shloka and bring out that deep emotion. And he does that. Now, this is something which still survives in our Indian films. That's why we have these songs coming in between. In a love sequence, the
Oh.
beloved says to her lover that I love you so much. And then she sings out a song. And that song is highly professional song sung by Lata Mangeshkar or M.S. Subbulakshmi or somebody. So it brings out the depth of feeling. Now this was the tactic of theater in ancient time. And this technique was followed in ancient Greek theater also. So in my book, which is a special study, a comparison between ancient Greek theater and ancient Indian theater, because from 1975-76 till about almost 1990, I was just, for 15 years, I was doing this study. And then I finally wrote that book called Dramatic Concepts, Greek and Indian. Now in that you would see that the same pattern is followed in Greek theater. And I have given account of what was the Greek theory and what were the technical words, you see, which were used by the Greeks. So when they will speak the dialogue, then they would just give a statement of the iambic meter. But when they would enunciate it, then they would have a particular technique called parakatalogi, in which the song came into the speech. And when they wanted to sing it fully, with all the intricacies of a melody, then it would become an ode or a song. It would become a proper ode, what is called in English an ode. And it would be not only sung, it would be danced by the chorus also. So
Wow.
ancient Greek theater was really this. I mean, most of us, even in the West, have forgotten about it. we don't know much about it.
So Greece and India were so far apart in
Yeah.
locations. How did this theater have so many similarities? Are you postulating it's Indo-European origin, or was it interaction?
Yeah, it's such a great enigma, and I spent almost all my life trying to discover an answer. Now I would say that number one, it is Indo-European origin. There is no doubt about it. We set aside the question whether Indo-European was located in Norway or Russia or in India or in whatever, but it is certainly Indo-European. The texts prove it, and there was this whole vision of the world. And then there must have been great exchanges. I think as archaeology would bring out in the due course of time, because we have not done serious archaeology now for almost 60, 70 years. So as we do more of archaeology, the facts will come out that there were exchanges and people
Here's a
traveled.
question to follow up on this. We talk about archaeology with the Greeks. We have the amphitheater. We find these locations where they would do the plays, the choruses. Do we have anything similar in ancient India that we know? Like, how was the theater production done? Was it an auditorium? Was it like in a house? How did that work?
Yes, we have very, very detailed accounts of it in India. We have a text called the Natya Shastra, which consists of about 6,000 verses, 36 chapters, in which every detail of performance is given. On the Greek side, we have a very small, sketchy book called the Poetics. In Greek, it's called Peripeitiki, that is around making,
right?
Around making or around art. Peripeitiki by Aristoteles. But the Natya Shastra is a very detailed account. It tells how to move a finger, how to move an eyelid. So But when you study even Aristotle, then you can see the fundamental principles of a performance, and the structure is given. And I have drawn all those comparisons and detailed accounts on the Greek side also, because many people wrote how the plays were performed and how the masks were made and how the rituals were done. The most important thing to notice is that ancient Greek theater was a highly religious theater. It was done as a worship to gods. It was done as sacred action. And I have chosen a Greek word for it called ieropraxis, that is sacred action. And it was never done as secular theater. All ancient Greek theater was religious. It was done only when there was a festival of a god, and it was done close to a temple. It was never done, and all these ancient amphitheaters were built close to a temple of a deity, almost all of them. So we have these surviving ancient amphitheaters in Greece, but we don't have any surviving ancient theaters in India, for the very simple reason that ancient Indian theaters were made out of wood and mud, and intentionally made temporary structures. Just as you don't preserve a mandapa in which you hold your marriage ceremony, similarly they never preserved a theater house, because it was supposed to be temporary. It was made for the festival or the performance, and then it was pulled apart. That's why
it kind of refers to that in the first chapter of the Natya Shastra, right? When the gods and demons are fighting, they create
the second chapter.
The
It's
Ranga,
yeah.
and then they have the four sides.
Yeah, there are detailed descriptions of how it was done, and unfortunately, India has not risen to the call of making an ancient Indian theater today. We should have, in all these, in last 70 years, chosen a place and reconstructed an ancient Indian theater house.
Can I interrupt for 1 second, Balaji?
Yeah.
As growing up as an Indian guy, I feel our parents have told us to avoid theater, avoid film, avoid entertainment.
Yes.
You know, this is a big part of my upbringing, at least as a ABCD. You know, I was born in Bangalore, but I grew up in the United States.
Yeah.
And so much of the lessons from my wise elders have been: don't watch movies, don't go to theater, don't see entertainment.
Right.
This has been a big part of my upbringing.
You are
and
right.
Everything you're saying right now is no. The theater can be a beautiful place for us to experience life in all its facets, all its navarasas, as Abhinava Gupta discussed, finally resulting on Shantarasa. And so I guess I'm frustrated right now because growing up as an Indian American in the United States, all my parents have told me is don't watch TV, don't watch movies, don't go to theater.
Yes, I would agree with them about TV. I would say don't watch TV either in India or in, but theater you should watch no matter where it is.
Theater's unique. It's live.
Theater.
It's real.
Go and see theater in Africa, in Asia, in America, in New York, London, anywhere. You see, the reason your parents told you all this is, again, a tragic part of our history. Just as the Puritanic Christians destroyed theater and told the Greeks, don't watch theater, and they stopped theater. You see, there was no theater after 4th century in Greece. Similarly, when Islam comes to India, it puts an end to public theater. And it puts an end not only to theater, it puts an end to the Hindu view of arts. The Hindu view of art was that art is sacred. As I said, just as the Greeks said, this is sacred action. Similarly, Natya was the fifth Veda. It brought you knowledge, it brought you entertainment, it taught you about life. And it was something to be practiced by men and women especially. And dance was sacred. It was sacred to the gods. Theatre was performed not just for human beings, it was performed for gods also. Now this whole notion that we perform theatre and we practice art in order to please the gods and men also. This whole Indo-European experience, which was cultivated to a great finesse in ancient Greece and in ancient India, was put to an end by Christianity in Greece and Islam in India. You see, in Islam, when Islam comes to India, then it makes art as a consumption item. That art is for sensory fun. It is meant for enjoyment of the ruling classes. It's not something for the people. It is not something sacred, because in Islam, you cannot worship through arts. Art is something which is haram, principally. So that's the whole big change which happened in India. And women got dissociated from art. And practice of art was no longer considered a purushartha or an aim of life. And so when your parents or even my parents...
Am I hearing you correctly? It's almost like we disdain beauty, right? We
Yes.
We don't like beauty.
Because
anything that is beautiful, we kind of reject it. Oh, this is below us. This is not
Yes.
sacred. It is just
Yes.
it is just for the senses. It's for the body. This is not sacred. You know, is that the attitude you're hinting
Yes.
at right now?
Yes, I mean, this is the big shift that happens in India in the attitude of the people. And this shift was brought in by Islam. Because of political correctness, nobody wants to talk about it.
Hey, keep in mind we have some Muslim viewers, so
Well,
salam alaikum to your
no.
Muslim viewers.
It's not a matter of pleasing or displeasing anybody, because
I know. I'm just
we are
joking.
doing an
Okay, I'm just
academic
saying,
discussion.
this here.
And it's very significant today, because our practices regarding art have to be looked upon in the context of history of art and what we have done to the artistic world and the artists. So all this is very important. And
yeah, I mean, I agree about it too, because I mean, what we're seeing today is this mass secularization of art, right?
Yeah.
Where art is no longer, it's not something that we value as a spiritual or intellectual pursuit. It's a monetary consumption pursuit, right?
Exactly.
Like these stories we're telling nowadays, or the art, the music that gets produced a lot of times, is just for the instant gratification. You don't sit down, you don't crunch with it, you don't sit with it. It doesn't course through you. And a part of this, I think, is like the point you're making is, you have this traditions, and we could talk a little more about this, about the rasas, right? The purpose of the rasas. And then even in the Greek sense, the idea of tragedy and comedy, how that plays out in the theater, is supposed to affect the way the audience engages and thinks about it. So can we talk a little bit about what is the purpose of rasa? What is the idea of rasa, and how does that connect the audience with the performer or the
yeah, you see, rasa is the outcome of art, but it is one outcome. And let's not forget that rasa is not an end in itself. Rasa is a means of taking you to a higher consciousness. Through rasa you get elevated. But once you get elevated in your emotional experience and your emotions get elevated, then what are you aspiring to? What are you looking to as higher? Now, when you are looking to higher, then you are looking to ultimate bliss. You are looking to Ananda. And Ananda is not something divorced from truth or knowledge of the self and self-discovery. So art is something which is a means to knowledge. You see, the Greeks also said that art is very huge. You know, I techni makri ovios vrachis. This life is small, but art is great. Art is wide. Because it is something that elevates us. It is something that brings knowledge. So, art was to bring knowledge, to bring an understanding of what is the truth, revealing the truth before you. So, I can quote and give you many quotations from the Sanskrit text and from the Greek text about how these were the social ideals. But they were the social ideals. So art was not for just gratification of the senses or of some kind of domination of society, or it was not for manipulation of markets. You see, it was not advertising. The purpose was always higher. And that's what the real purpose of art was. And it was practiced that way. See?
That's beautiful, Bharaji. That is so beautiful. But I feel like, in our modern day, a lot of people think that art is just a luxury of those who are fortunate. Like who have the convenience, Maslow's hierarchy. Oh, you have shelter and housing and clothing. Oh, so you can just waste your time singing and all that.
Right.
People don't value art as much as they should.
You see, along with Enlightenment in Europe, we had certain theories like utilitarianism. And we had then other theories of life like Marxism and socialism, in which art was always suspect. So the Marxists have always taught that unless art helps you in disseminating the Marxist doctrine, it is something which should not be practiced.
Exactly.
So as long as Bertolt Brecht is held as a great theater personality, because he's all the time telling you that don't get lost in art, don't get some kind of a deflection. Art is only to give you a message, and the message is of revolution. Now, this kind of a schizophrenia came into Europe, and it was different from what the classical, so-called classical world of ancient times believed. Now, the classical world of ancient times was not Western. It was Greek, it was Indian, it was Chinese, it was even belonging to the Druids, because they had the great depth of art. And their values were that art is something that leads to the divine. Moksha margam niyachati. You see, art is something, as Yagyavalkya Smriti says, Veena vadana tattvagyo, jati shruti visharadaha, talagyo aprayasena moksha margam niyachati. So somebody who knows to play the veena, somebody who knows what are the true scales of music, jati shruti, somebody who knows tala, then without much effort, he proceeds towards moksha, towards liberation. So art has that very high ideal. And as Kalidas also said, that different people discover different things in art. Many kinds of fulfillment. A hero would discover heroism in art. A lover would discover how to make love in art. And a businessman would discover how to make money